I always thought funerals were about saying goodbye, but the day we buried my aunt was the day my real story began, because when I reached into the pocket of her old gray coat, I found a letter addressed to me, in her handwriting, and the words on the front made my whole world tilt. For Emily, do not read until you're ready to learn the truth. Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Whispers of Grandma Joy, a quiet place where we explore the stories that shape us, break us, and sometimes put us back together again. If this story touches your heart, please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let me take you to the moment. My life split into before and after. The church smelled like lilies, the kind that look beautiful from a distance, but feel too heavy when you stand close. I sat in the second row, hands folded tightly in my lap, listening to people describe my aunt, as if she were made of pure sunlight. She was always so calm. She never raised her voice. She had a heart of gold. I wanted to stand up and scream, not because any of it was wrong, but because none of it was enough. They talked about her baking, her gardening, her gentle way of listening, but no one mentioned the nights. She stayed awake sitting by my bed when I had night terrors. No one mentioned that she saved me, and they didn't mention the part I didn't learn until much, much later, the part she hid so deeply that she took it with her into the ground. After the service, people hugged me mechanically, as if grief were contagious, and they needed to be polite about catching it. You were like a daughter to her, one woman said. Like a daughter, if only she knew the truth. The cemetery wind was sharp and cold. As we lowered her into the earth, I kept waiting for someone to tell me what to do, where to stand, how to breathe, how to exist in a world where the one person who loved me without conditions was gone. So I stood still, my fingers clenched around the sleeves of my coat, trying to hold myself together. When the crowd thinned and the last shovel of dirt was laid over her casket, I stepped toward the old wooden bench nearby and lowered myself slowly onto it. For a moment, the world felt unbearably quiet. The wind hushed. The birds paused. Even my breath felt afraid to make a sound. I pulled her old gray coat tighter around my shoulders, the one she always wore when she walked me to school in the rain. It still smelled faintly of lavender and cinnamon. Comfort, home. My fingers slipped into the coat pocket, seeking warmth, seeking her, seeking anything familiar. That was when I felt it. Paper, folded, thick, deliberate. I pulled it out slowly. An envelope, old, yellowing at the edges, her handwriting across the front, as unmistakable as her voice. For Emily, when you're ready. My breath stilled. I looked around, but no one seemed to notice that the ground beneath my feet had just shifted. My aunt had left me something, not a necklace, not a keepsake, not a recipe card, a message, a secret, something she didn't dare say while she was alive. My hands trembled as I turned it over. The seal was unbroken, but the weight of it, the weight of whatever lived inside, pressed against my palm like a heartbeat. I slipped it into my purse, close to my chest, like something fragile and dangerous. Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't a goodbye. It was the beginning. I didn't open the letter right away. I couldn't. Grief does strange things to the body. It slows your hands, thickens your breath, makes time feel syrupy and unreal. So instead of tearing the seal that moment, I walked home in silence. Every step felt heavier than the last. The sky looked like it was about to rain, but it didn't. It just hovered there, unsettled, the way my heart felt. When I reached the house, I unlocked the door and stepped into a world that didn't feel like mine anymore. Her mug was still on the counter. Her slippers were still by the chair. Her knitting needles rested, exactly where she had left them, before the stroke took her away from me. The house felt full and empty at the same time. I set my purse on the table, staring at the envelope inside it, as if it could stare back. The silence of the house felt wrong, too still, too expectant. Finally, I pulled the letter out and sat at the kitchen table. The seal was old, cracked slightly at the edges. It felt fragile, as if the moment I opened it, something irreversible would break free. Maybe that's why my hands shook when I slid a finger beneath the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, carefully. Her handwriting flowed across the page, gentle and looping, like the way she used to hum when she cooked. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then my time has come, and your time to know the truth has begun. My heart thudded. Truth. I kept reading. I have carried a secret for many years, one that was never mine to keep, yet I kept it anyway, because I loved you more than I feared the consequences. My breath faltered. Before you were mine, you belonged to a world that did not want you. I froze. The kitchen blurred around me. Belonged to a world that did not want me? I read the words again, as if they might change, if I blinked hard enough. Your mother had reasons. Reasons she believed were justified. Reasons I could not accept. So I made a choice, one that saved you, and cost me everything. My chest tightened, as something old and buried stirred inside me. Memories I never fully trusted, half-images, fragmented sounds, a woman's voice raised in anger, a slammed door, the echo of footsteps. Walking away, my hands trembled over the page. The truth lives in the attic, in the old trunk you were never allowed to open. Go there when you are ready. But be warned, my love. The truth will change everything you thought you knew. About your family, about your childhood, and about me. I felt the room tilt. She knew she was dying. She knew this would come to me, after she was gone. She planned it. The letter continued. I wish I could hold your hand through this, the way I did when you were small, but I can only give you what I have left. My honesty, my love, and the key to the beginning. A small object dropped from the fold of the letter, onto the table. A key, old, brass, cold against my fingertips. The key to the attic trunk. My aunt's final sentence was written in ink that pressed harder into the page, as if she wanted these words to echo loudest. Remember, Emily, not all families are built from blood. Some are built from choice, and I chose you. Now it's time for you to choose yourself. The room felt too small to hold the weight of her truth. I clutched the letter to my chest and sobbed, not from grief alone, but from the terrifying knowledge that my entire life had been built on a story I wasn't meant to know. When the tears finally slowed, my gaze lifted toward the ceiling, toward the attic, toward the trunk she had spent years keeping locked, waiting, protecting. What was inside, and why had she been so afraid? For me to see it? I wiped my face, took a shaky breath, and whispered into the empty house, I'm ready. But I wasn't. I didn't know then. That opening that trunk would be the first step into a truth darker, deeper, and far more devastating than anything I had imagined. The attic door creaked, the same way it did when I was a child. A long, shivering groan that always made me think something was waking up behind it. Dust drifted in the air, like quiet ghosts, as I climbed the narrow wooden stairs with the old brass key in my hand. I had been in the attic hundreds of times growing up, but somehow it felt different now, as if every shadow had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. There it was. The trunk, dark oak, metal corners, a long scratch across the lid, like someone once tried to force it open. I knelt slowly in front of it. The key slipped into the lock, like it had been waiting for years. Click! My heart thudded. I lifted the lid. A soft exhale of air escaped, the kind of breath a house releases when a secret finally comes undone. Inside were items wrapped in cloth, papers tied with twine, and a small wooden box with a cracked lid. I reached for the first item, a stack of photographs. The top one made my breath catch. It was me, at maybe 2 years old, sitting on my aunt's lap, on a faded green porch. But something was off. My aunt's smile, the gentle one everyone always spoke of, looked strained, forced, and behind her, cut out of the photograph entirely, was a jagged white space, where someone used to be, someone intentionally removed. I lifted the next photo. Same porch, same green. This time, I was standing between two women. One was my aunt, the other, my mother, her hand on my shoulder, in a way that looked more like a grip than a gesture of affection. And again, to the far left, another torn figure, someone my aunt didn't want me to see. I set the photographs aside and reached deeper into the trunk. My hand brushed against paper, a file, a hospital file, my name at the top, but the date, was 3 years earlier than the year I believed I was born. My stomach tightened. I flipped the page. There were notes, handwritten, fragments of conversations. Mother unwilling to sign custody papers. Patient to stay temporarily with maternal aunt. Confidential. Do not release to primary guardian. My mother wasn't considered my primary guardian. My aunt was. A sudden chill swept across my arms. I read the handwritten note at the bottom. Keep her safe, whatever it takes. Signed, A. Carter, my aunt, protecting me before I could walk, before I could talk, before I could remember anything at all. I pressed a hand against my chest, feeling the beat quicken. Something in this trunk was about to change everything. I reached for the last item, the wooden box. It was light, too light. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to the same person, Jonathan. And every single letter had been returned, unopened, marked, recipient relocated, no forwarding address. I stared at the name. Jonathan who? Why had she written him for years? Why had she never spoken of him? And why? Why were there letters, addressed in her handwriting, that looked nothing like her usual style, as if she didn't want anyone to recognize them? I pulled out the last envelope. This one was open. Inside was a single sentence, written in a shaky hand. He will never know. She must never know. I didn't understand. Not yet. But the trunk had only given me pieces. The rest of the truth was waiting for me downstairs, with the woman who once called herself my mother. I sat on the attic floor for nearly an hour, photographs scattered around me, hospital files trembling in my lap. Every memory I had suddenly felt unreliable. My aunt used to tell me that I was delicate as a child, prone to long nights of crying, fearful of loud voices. But now, with the evidence in front of me, I realized something chilling. Those weren't childhood quirks. They were reactions, trauma, echoes of a life I had lived before I came to my aunt. Memories I had blocked out. I saw flashes now, small, sharp images. A woman yelling, a door slamming, a cold kitchen floor, a man I couldn't quite remember, and a voice, soft, trembling, my aunt's voice. It's okay, Emily. You're safe now. I've got you. Safe from what? Safe from whom? I picked up a photograph that had slipped under my knee. It was me at age 5, grinning with my front teeth missing, standing beside my aunt in a schoolyard. But behind the smile, my eyes looked tired, wary, as if I already knew that the world could be dangerous. Even when you were small, my aunt's arm was wrapped around me tightly, not in a casual hug, but in a protective hold. A hold that said, she's mine to shield. Stay back. I hadn't noticed it growing up. Children don't see things like that. But now, as an adult, the message was unmistakable. I thought back to the few memories I had of my mother from childhood, all of them blurred, none of them warm, just sharp expressions, short tempers, a feeling of being in the way. My aunt stepped in early, fed me, bathed me, walked me to school, apologized for me, to me, and sometimes, I realize now, for me. She protected me long before anyone knew I needed protection. But the biggest question remained, from who and why? The trunk had shown me evidence, but not the story, and I needed the story. I took a deep breath, gathered the documents, and closed the trunk gently. As I stood up, I whispered into the dusty air, "Tell me the truth, Auntie, please." But addicts don't talk, and letters don't fill in their own blanks. If I wanted answers, there was only one person alive who could give them to me, my mother. I drove to my mother's house the next morning. The whole way there, my heart thudded like it was trying to warn me, "Turn back. Do not open this door." But the trunk had already opened, and so had everything inside me. My mother opened the door, with her usual tight smile, one that never reached her eyes. "Emily," she said, voice stiff, "I wasn't expecting you." "I know," I replied. "Can we talk?" She hesitated too long, then stepped aside. The living room looked the same, as it always did, perfectly arranged, not a pillow out of place. My mother liked control, needed it. "Sit," she said. I did. She sat across from me, legs crossed, hands resting neatly in her lap. "What is this about?" she asked, I studied her face. Lines of tension around her mouth, a twitch in her jaw, eyes too alert. She was bracing for something. She knew. Maybe not everything, but something. I reached into my bag and placed the hospital file on the table between us. Her face drained of color, faster than I imagined possible. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "In the attic," I said softly. "In Auntie's trunk." Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out at first. Then, "You shouldn't have gone through her things." "I had to," I said. "She left me a letter. She wanted me to know the truth." My mother froze. "What truth?" she said too quickly. I opened the file. "I wasn't born the year you told me. My custody wasn't yours. And someone was cut out of every photograph." My mother's hands clenched. "Emily, listen to me." "No," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You listen to me." She blinked, as if startled by a version of me she didn't recognize. "For my entire life, you told me Auntie was irresponsible, that she meddled, that she exaggerated things, that she couldn't be trusted." I leaned forward. "But every document, every photo, every note in that trunk says the opposite." Her jaw tightened. "It was for your own good," she snapped. Anger sparked in my chest. "My own good?" I repeated. "Lying about my birth year? Sending letters to someone named Jonathan and hiding them? Letting Auntie raise me while pretending you were the victim?" Her face broke then. A fracture. "You don't understand, Emily." "Then make me understand," I whispered. Silence. A long, terrible silence. Finally, she looked away. Her voice, when it came, was a trembling whisper. "Your aunt should have stayed out of it." The room felt colder. "What do you mean?" "Out of what?" She swallowed hard. "The mistake I made." Her eyes filled with something dark. Regret or resentment, I couldn't tell. "You weren't supposed to be part of my life," she said quietly. "You were supposed to be his problem. The missing man. The torn-out figure in the photos. The name on every unopened letter. Jonathan." My heart slammed against my ribs. My mother closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the truth finally began to spill. My mother's confession hung in the air, like smoke from a fire that had been burning for years. "You were supposed to be his problem." His. The word echoed inside me, like a door slamming shut in an empty room. I placed a hand on the hospital file, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Who was he, Mom?" She exhaled sharply, standing up and pacing the room, like a caged animal. "A mistake," she muttered. "A man who ruined everything. A man who should have stayed gone." Her hands trembled, but her voice hardened. "Your father." The word cracked through me, like lightning splitting a tree. I had spent my entire life believing my father was a quiet absence, a silence explained away by vague stories of youthful recklessness and not being ready for responsibility. But this was something else. "Mom," I whispered, "why wasn't this file ever given to me? Why was it labeled confidential?" She stopped pacing. Her eyes narrowed. "Because I didn't want you to know the truth," she said. "I didn't want you asking questions. I didn't want you finding him." My heart picked up speed. Was he dangerous? Silence. Her eyes flicked away. That was all the answer I needed. I opened the hospital file again, my fingers brushing the medical notes. There were records of bruises, tiny ones, on me, as a baby. I felt sick. I flipped another page. A social worker's note. "Recommend temporary placement with maternal aunt for safety." Safety. My aunt had saved me. My mother lowered herself into a chair, her voice cracking. "I didn't hurt you, Emily. I want you to know that. But I couldn't protect you from him. I tried. God, I tried." She covered her face. "And when your aunt stepped in, it was easier to let her. Easier to believe you were better off with her than with the mess I'd made." The room blurred. I pressed my palm against the table to keep myself steady. My voice came out as a whisper. "So you let her raise me?" She looked up. "No, she took you." Her voice sharpened, brittle with old resentment. "I told her I could handle things. I told her I didn't need help, but she insisted. She always insisted. She insisted because I wasn't safe," I said quietly. My mother's expression flickered. Guilt, anger, pride, fear. A storm with no center. "She ruined everything," she whispered. "She made me look unfit. She told people I couldn't protect my own daughter." I stared at her. She wasn't trying to take me from you, Mom. She was trying to save me. She flinched, as if the truth struck harder than any accusation. I gathered the papers and placed them neatly back into the file. I need to know everything, I said. My mother shook her head. No, Emily, you think you do, but you don't. I stood. I'll decide that myself. Her voice rose, desperate. He left scars on all of us, Emily, not just you. I turned toward the door, and because you refused to face him, I said softly, Auntie spent her whole life facing him for you. I left the house, with the hospital file tucked under my arm, feeling like I had just cracked open a door into a room filled with ghosts. Back home, I spread the contents of the trunk across the living room floor. Photographs, notes, letters, a lifetime of secrets. But it was the damaged photograph that called to me the loudest, the one with the torn corner, the one that once held a person my aunt didn't want me to see. I picked it up, holding it to the light. My aunt's face, soft, tired, protective. My mother, stiff smile, hand gripping my shoulder like a warning. Me, a small child, leaning into the only safe place I knew. And next to us, nothing. A white, jagged void. Whoever had been in that corner was cut out viciously. Not a careful trim, but a desperate rip. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in my aunt's handwriting, were 3 short words. Not for her. Not for who? Not for me? Or not for my mother? I felt something tighten, deep in my chest. This wasn't just about a missing face. It was about a missing truth. I took a breath and retrieved the other photographs. More missing corners. More empty spaces where someone once stood. One photo had a faint outline, the shape of a man's hand on a railing. Another had the edge of a sleeve, a dark blue jacket. Another showed a shoe, polished, unfamiliar, too large to belong to either woman. Piece by piece, I realized something. My aunt hadn't been removing this man from her memories. She had been removing him from mine. A deliberate erasure, a protection, a warning. I pressed the photos against my chest, eyes stinging. What did he do? I whispered. Who was he to you? And who was he to me? But the photographs only stared back, with silent, stubborn emptiness. Just then, a gust of wind rattled the window, and something fluttered out from inside one of the envelopes. A scrap, a torn piece. My breath caught. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was the missing fragment of the photograph, and on it, a man's jawline, a faint beard, and eyes. Cold, sharp, unmistakably familiar. Eyes I had seen in the mirror. My own, my father. The name, Jonathan, echoed in my mind. Long after I found the torn photo corner, Jonathan, the man my aunt wrote to for years. The man whose letters were always returned, always unopened. The man who might be in those photographs. I gathered the stack of letters and sat with them on the sofa, hands trembling slightly. Each envelope was worn, edges softened by time, postmarks faded. The earliest letter was from 25 years ago. The latest, just 2 years before my aunt died. She never stopped writing him, not once. I opened the first letter. Her handwriting flowed softly, full of warmth and pain. Jonathan, she is growing so fast. She looks like you more each year, though I try my hardest to shield her from the parts of you that frightened us both. I swallowed hard. Parts that frightened them? I read on. Her mother refuses to say your name, and I can't blame her. But Emily deserves to know. Kindness from someone in her bloodline. I pressed a hand to my chest, the ache growing. Kindness? Fear? Who was this man? Why did he leave? Why did he never write back? I opened another letter. I will not let her grow up afraid. I will not let her become a shadow of your mistakes. Another. She cries when she hears shouting. It brings back memories she shouldn't have. Memories I try to soothe away. Another. If you ever cared about her, please stay away. Please. My hands began to shake. Stay away. The letters told a story, even without his replies. A man who caused damage. A man who left wounds. A man my aunt feared, but also felt responsible for. I reached the last unopened letter. It was heavier, thicker, the paper stiffer than the rest. The ink on the front looked slightly blurred, as if her hand had trembled when she wrote my name. Inside was a single page. This time, the handwriting was shaky, frail. Emily, I never wanted you to think he abandoned you. He didn't. I asked him to stay away. I begged him to, for your safety, for your childhood, for your chance at a life without fear. My breath caught. He was not a monster. He was a broken man who broke others, including your mother, including me. A tear fell onto the page. But he loved you. He loved you more than he knew how to love anything. And the day he left was the only time I ever saw him cry. I covered my mouth. The world tilted. You deserve the whole truth, Emily, not the pieces we chose for you. A noise escaped me, half sob, half gasp, because the very bottom of the letter held one final line. A line that made my heart freeze. Jonathan tried to come back for you. My hands trembled. I turned the page over and found a note scrawled by someone else, in a handwriting I had never seen before. She never knew I wrote back. Jonathan. My entire body turned cold. He did write back, but my aunt never told me. My aunt hid his replies. My aunt cut him out of every photograph. My aunt, the one who raised me, held me, loved me, had also kept me from knowing my father. The truth wasn't just painful, it was shattering. And it wasn't finished, because at the bottom of the envelope was one more thing, a return address, from a place I had never heard of, a place he had lived, a place I would have to visit if I wanted the truth, the full truth, the truth my aunt tried to carry alone. The return address on Jonathan's last letter led me 2 hours outside the city to a quiet town surrounded by bare winter trees and roads that seemed to hold their breath. The building itself was small, white, almost gentle-looking, a care home with faded blue shutters and wind chimes that rang softly. Whenever the breeze passed, I stepped inside and felt warmth hit my face. Too warm, the heat turned up too high, the air carrying the faint scent of old books and something sweet. A nurse at the front desk looked up. "May I help you?" I swallowed. "I'm looking for someone who lived here. Jonathan." I paused, realizing I didn't know his last name. "Jonathan L., maybe?" Recognition flickered in her eyes, a small, sad smile softening her face. "Oh, Jonathan." She exhaled gently. "He passed away 3 months ago." 3 months. Around the same time, my aunt's health collapsed, as if 2 old secrets decided to leave the world within the same season. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry," the nurse added quietly. "He didn't have many visitors. Or, well, any." My chest ached. I took a breath. Did he ever leave anything behind? A message? Papers? Anything addressed to Emily? Her eyes softened. "Actually, yes." She disappeared into a small office and returned holding a sealed envelope. My name on the front, written in a shaky hand. I took it with trembling fingers. "He asked me to give this to a young woman named Emily," she said. "He said she might come one day, when she was ready." The warmth of the building suddenly felt suffocating. Outside, I sat on a bench beneath a bare tree and opened the envelope. Inside was a single letter. "Emily, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And I know your aunt has joined me. She always said we would leave this world, the same way we lived in it, arguing about how to protect you." I closed my eyes. As emotion surged through me, "I want you to know the truth. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I was afraid I would become the man who hurt everyone I ever cared about. Your mother wanted me gone. Your aunt wanted you safe. And I, for the first time in my life, agreed with both of them." My jaw trembled, but I came back, years later, sober, ready, wanting to see you again. Your aunt begged me not to. She said you finally had peace, a routine, a life without fear. And I had no right to disrupt it. A tear slid down my cheek. She wasn't cruel. She was terrified. Of me, of what my presence might awaken in you. The memories she worked so hard to bury. My breath hitched. "If you hate me after reading this, I understand. But I want you to know, I loved you. Even when staying away was the only good thing I could offer." At the bottom of the letter was one final line. "Forgive her if you can. Forgive me if you can't." I pressed the paper to my chest and sobbed as the wind carried away the pieces of a childhood I never understood. But part of the truth was still missing. The part only my mother knew, and I wasn't leaving this story unfinished. I drove straight from the care home to my mother's house. I didn't call first. This time, I didn't want her to prepare answers or shape the truth before I could hear it raw. She opened the door, with surprise hardening into irritation. "Emily," she said sharply. "It's late." "I know." My voice was calm, too calm. "Let me in." Something in my expression must have unsettled her, because she stepped aside, without another word. I laid Jonathan's letter on the table. She stared at it, like it was a ghost resurfacing. "You found him," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "Just his words, his truth. Now I want yours." She looked suddenly exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that sinks into the bones. "Sit," she murmured. We did. Silence stretched, long and painful, before she finally spoke. "You were born on a Tuesday morning," she said, her voice distant. "I remember because it rained so hard. I thought the hospital roof might collapse." She didn't look at me. As she continued, "I wasn't ready to be a mother. I wasn't stable. Your father and I, we were a disaster. Beautiful some days, violent on others." Her eyes darkened. "He wasn't always cruel. He could be gentle. He could be magic." She swallowed. "And that's what made it worse." I felt a painful knot tighten in my chest. "There were good moments," she whispered, "but when he drank, he became someone else. Someone with hands that shook, for all the wrong reasons." Tears gathered at the edges of her eyes. "The night before you were born, he pushed me. Hard. I hit the floor." Her voice cracked. "A neighbor called the police. He was taken in. I delivered you alone." My breath caught. "I wanted to love you," she whispered. "I tried. But every time I looked at you, I saw him. His eyes, his temper, his shadow." My voice broke. "I was a baby." "I know," she cried, tears spilling now. "And that's why your aunt hated me for it." She watched me fall apart, watched me snap, watched me struggle to hold you. Without shaking, she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "I didn't hurt you. I swear I didn't. But I wasn't enough." I felt something inside me soften and break at the same time. "So Auntie took me," I whispered. "She stormed into my apartment," my mother said. "She packed your things into a grocery bag and walked out the door. She told me I didn't deserve you until I learned how to deserve myself." Her voice dropped. She was right. My throat tightened painfully. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" She looked at me then, really looked. "Because I wanted to be the mother you thought I was," she whispered. And I was terrified that knowing the truth would make you hate me. The ache inside me deepened. "I don't hate you," I said quietly, "but I need to understand you." She nodded. "And you will, but not here. Not with half-truths and broken memories." She placed a hand over mine. "Go home, Emily. Read the rest of what she left you. Your aunt knew how to tell the story, better than I ever could." Her voice trembled. "And when you're ready, come back. We'll talk again." I left with tears on my cheeks and a heart full of jagged pieces. But something else stirred too, the determination to find out exactly what my aunt had spent her life protecting me from. I returned home, long after midnight. I sat on the living room floor, with the trunk open beside me, and took out the last envelope. My aunt had left. It was thicker than the others, heavier, almost hesitant in my hands. I opened it carefully. Inside were multiple pages, some handwritten, others photocopied documents, and one photograph that made my breath freeze. My aunt, my mother, and a man, standing between them. Jonathan. He looked nothing like the monster I had imagined. Not a shadow, not a threat, just a man. A man with tired eyes, eyes like mine. The story spilled across the pages. "Emily, if you are reading this, your mother has told you her version of the truth. Now it is time for mine." My chest tightened. She loved you, in her own broken way, but she could not protect you from the man she loved, and she could not protect herself. So I stepped in. I inhaled shakily. "Your father was not evil. He was sick. He lost control of his temper, the way some people lose control of their drinking. It does not excuse what he did, but it explains why he tried so hard to be better. Another page. Your mother feared him. I feared what he could become. And the night she left the hospital, she put you in my arms and begged me to keep you safe. My breath trembled. I promised her I would. I promised you I would, and I kept that promise, even when it broke all of us. The next paragraph was written with uneven pressure, as if her hand had shaken. He came back when you were 5, sober, hopeful, wanting to try again. My pulse quickened. Your mother refused. She locked the door, screamed at him to leave. But when she turned away, you cried for him. A visible ache carved its way through me. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I told him to leave town, that you were safe, that you were loved, that the past was too dangerous to risk again. The next line was smudged. A tear mark, maybe. He believed me. He left, and I lived with that guilt. Every day since. I covered my mouth as a sob tore free. The letter closed with, asterisk, asterisk, do not blame your mother. Do not blame your father. Do not blame me. We were 3 broken people, trying to raise a child, in a world that didn't give us a chance. If you must blame something, blame the circumstances that shaped us. Asterisk, asterisk, the final sentence felt like a hand resting gently on my shoulder. All I ever wanted was for you to feel loved, even if the truth had to wait. The room blurred. I pressed my forehead to the papers and whispered, Auntie, why did you carry all this alone? But deep down, I already knew. Because love sometimes means holding a story until someone is strong enough to hear it. And tonight, in the quiet, with grief still raw, I finally was. The probate office was colder than I expected. A long, sterile room, with echoes that seemed to bounce off every surface. I arrived early, clutching the file of papers from the trunk like a life raft. My mother arrived late. Her steps were hesitant, as if each one carried the weight of 30 years of buried truth. She avoided my eyes, and I couldn't tell whether it was shame or fear that kept her gaze on the floor. Across the room, a distant cousin I barely knew whispered to another relative, Emily's going to contest the will. I heard the house is worth a fortune now. I swallowed hard. Auntie's house wasn't a fortune. It was a childhood, a memory, a sanctuary, a burial ground for secrets no one else had carried. A clerk finally called our names. Estate of Margaret L. Richardson. My aunt. Parties, please step forward. We sat. My mother on one side of the table, me on the other. The table felt like an ocean between us. The executor cleared his throat. Miss Emily, as the sole named beneficiary, you've inherited the property, assets, and personal effects left behind. Whispers erupted behind me. I kept my face still. My mother flinched, and then composed herself with visible effort. The executor continued. There is one matter requiring clarification. A letter addressed to the court, written by the deceased 6 months prior. He slid an envelope forward. My aunt's handwriting. My mother inhaled sharply. The judge read aloud. If my daughter, yes, daughter, ever seeks the truth, give her my blessing, to know everything. The room gasped. The judge kept reading. I raised her as my own, not because her mother was unfit, but because the world broke all 3 of us. Do not punish her mother. Do not punish her father. Let Emily choose her own story, when she is ready. My mother covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling. The judge paused. Miss Emily, do you wish to share anything before we finalize the estate? I stood slowly. My voice was steady, but inside everything churned. My aunt protected me in every way she knew how, but I don't want her legacy to be a weapon against the people she loved. I looked at my mother. This house isn't a battlefield. It's a memory, and I won't let it tear us apart. My mother's tears fell freely now. Behind us, relatives whispered again, but this time with something like respect, or maybe awe. When the hearing ended, the executor handed me the keys. Cold metal against warm skin. A symbol of inheritance, a symbol of burden, a symbol of truth. But I wasn't done yet. I had someone else to face. Someone whose absence had shaped an entire childhood. As the hearing ended, I gathered my things and prepared to leave. That's when a man approached. Tall, gray streak in his hair, wearing a worn leather jacket that somehow felt familiar. He cleared his throat gently. "You're Emily?" I hesitated. "Yes." He nodded, eyes softening. "My name is Michael." He paused, searching my expression. "I was a friend of your father." The air thinned around me. "My father?" The words scraped out of my throat. He nodded. "I was with him the night he left town." I froze. Suddenly the room faded. The murmuring voices, the shuffling papers, the echoing hallways. All I could see was the man in front of me. "Why are you here?" I whispered. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. Old, yellowed, creases soft from time. "He asked me to keep this. Said he'd give it to you himself when he was ready." A sad smile tugged at his lips. "But he never got that chance." He extended the envelope to me. My fingers trembled as I took it. "What's in it?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "I never opened it. Didn't feel it was my place." He looked down, voice thick. "Your father talked about you every day. Not the man he used to be, but the father he wanted to become." My throat tightened painfully. "He wasn't perfect, Emily, but he tried. More than anyone knows." Silence hung between us. Alive, heavy, aching. Then he met my eyes again. "If you need help understanding anything he left behind, I'm here." He gave a gentle nod. "For him, and for you." He walked away, before I could find the words to thank him. I stood in the hallway, clutching the envelope, my heart beat loud in my ears. For years, truth had been hidden from me. Now, truth was coming to me, on its own. Through letters, voices, people who remembered my parents not as monsters, but as humans. I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. My breath caught. To my daughter, whose laughter was the only thing that ever made me believe I could be more than my past. My eyes blurred. "I left not because I didn't love you, but because I did." The ink smudged in places. Tears. Maybe his own. "If life gives us another chance, find me. If not, forgive me when you are ready." I pressed the paper to my chest, feeling a warmth I had never felt before. A father's voice, finally reaching me. Not angry, not ashamed, just human. But another truth awaited. One more piece of this tangled past I needed to confront. The last person who held a missing piece. My mother. I drove to my mother's house, without thinking, as if my feet already knew. There was no avoiding this conversation. She opened the door, before I even knocked. Her eyes were red, her cheeks still streaked with tears. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. We didn't move for a moment, just stood there, two women bound by blood and fractured history. Then she stepped aside. "Come in!" Her house felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe I had outgrown the tight spaces, where truth couldn't breathe. She sank onto the couch and looked at her hands. "I heard what you said in court," she murmured. "You defended me." "I told the truth," I replied softly. "You're not the villain. None of you were." Her chin trembled. "You don't know what it was like. I loved your father, and I hated him. I needed him, and I feared him." She looked up at me finally, her eyes raw. "When he left, part of me hoped he'd return, as a better man." She swallowed a sob, and he did. But by then, I wasn't a better woman. I sat beside her slowly. Her voice grew fragile. "I didn't give you away because I didn't love you. I gave you away because I loved you enough to let someone else do better." My breath hitched. She continued, "When your father came back, we fought. But it wasn't anger. Not that time. It was grief. We realized we both wanted you, but neither of us was capable of being who you needed." A tear fell onto her lap. "Your aunt stepped in and saved us all. Not just you, us." I took a long, trembling breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. Her voice cracked. "Because I didn't want you to look at me and see a coward." Silence sat between us, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was honest, raw, human, real. I reached out and took her hand. She froze, as if she didn't believe she deserved the gesture. "Mom," I said softly, "a coward runs away. You stayed. You showed up, even broken, even hurting, even scared." Tears spilled again, but this time they were softer. She whispered, "Do you hate me for the years we lost?" I squeezed her hand. No, I hurt for them, but I don't hate you. She exhaled a long, shaking breath, as if releasing decades of shame and silence. I didn't know what would come next. Reconciliation, distance, something in between. But for the first time, we were finally speaking, as two people, trying to understand each other. Not mother and daughter, trapped in old roles. My mother wiped her eyes. "Emily," she whispered, "your father would be proud of you." I closed my eyes, as warmth spread through my chest, a wound healing, from the inside out. Outside, wind rustled the trees softly. Inside, 2 generations, finally, let the truth do what silence never could, bring us back together. Healing doesn't arrive like a lightning strike. It doesn't crash through the door, or announce itself with fireworks. It comes quietly, in moments so small, you almost miss them. For me, it began the day after I spoke with my mother. I woke up in my apartment, sunlight warming the blanket, birds tapping lightly against the window, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't wake up feeling like a mistake. I made tea. Simple, warm, comforting. No memories stabbed me. No guilt sat on my chest. Just silence. Safe silence. I went to the art studio again, the one with paint-splattered aprons and soft jazz in the background. This time, I didn't paint sadness. I painted light, soft strokes, gentle colors, a sunrise. When the instructor walked by, she paused. "That's beautiful," she whispered. I hadn't heard those words about anything I made in a very long time. I smiled, a real smile, one that felt earned. Later that week, my mother invited me to lunch. We sat near a window overlooking the town square. She looked healthier, as if telling the truth, had lifted a weight from her shoulders. She had carried alone for too long. She reached across the table and touched my hand gently. "I want to know you," she said softly. "Not the little girl I lost, the woman you've become." I swallowed hard. I want that too. And just like that, something old and broken started stitching itself together. Not perfectly, not quickly, but honestly, that afternoon, I told her about my art, my dreams, my fears, the loneliness I never admitted out loud. She listened, really listened, and when she apologized again, for the years, for the secrets, for the loss, I didn't flinch. I just breathed. Healing, I realized, was not about forgetting the pain. Healing was about letting the pain finally speak, and then gently letting it sit down. A few days later, a message appeared on my phone. From unknown, subject, "Thank you." It was Michael. "Your father's letter. I think it gave him peace. I hope it gives you some too." Attached was a photo, an old one. My father holding me as a toddler, both of us laughing, sunlight in our hair, my breath caught. For years, I only remembered him leaving. But here, in this photo, he was someone who loved me, someone who tried, someone lost, not cruel. And suddenly, I didn't feel abandoned anymore. I just felt human, someone once broken, but learning to mend, piece by piece, day by day. The healing wasn't perfect. Some nights, I still cried. Some mornings, I still doubted. But I kept going, and that was enough. Spring arrived quietly that year. Cherry blossoms bloomed along the sidewalks, painting the world in soft pastels. And inside my aunt's house, my house now, I felt something shifting. Not guilt, not heaviness, something like belonging. I decided to restore it, not renovate, not transform. Restore, honor, preserve, the home that carried my childhood, the home that held my aunt's love, the home that sheltered me when the world felt too sharp. Each room became a chapter. The living room, where she taught me to read. The kitchen, where she taught me warmth. The hallway, where framed memories slowly returned to the walls they belonged to. And the attic, once a graveyard of secrets, became a studio filled with light. I painted there every morning. One afternoon, as I brushed golden hues across a canvas, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My mother appeared, small, unsure, but hopeful. "Is this a bad time?" she asked. I wiped my hands on a cloth. "Not at all." She walked in slowly, her eyes drifting to the canvases on the wall. Her breath caught. "Emily, These are beautiful. Something inside me warmed. Thank you, I whispered. She hesitated before speaking again. I'd like to help. With the house? If you'll let me. I nodded. Let's do it together. And we did. For the next months, we restored the garden, sorted old boxes, donated what no longer held meaning. We found photographs I didn't know existed. My aunt, my father, my mother, all young and full of life, before the world fractured around them. Sometimes we laughed, sometimes we cried, but always we moved forward. A gentle, steady rebirth of something neither of us knew we had lost. One evening, after hanging fresh curtains in the living room, my mother said something unexpected. You know, she whispered, your aunt didn't save you from us. She saved us for you. Tears filled my eyes, because for the first time, I understood. My family wasn't broken. It was simply navigating a story, too painful to speak aloud. Now, we were learning to speak again. Months later, I opened my first small art exhibition. Nothing fancy, just a quiet display in a cozy community center. To my surprise, people came. They lingered, they smiled, they felt something. My mother stood proudly in the front row, her eyes shining, with a pride I never saw as a child, not because she didn't feel it, but because life had swallowed it whole. After the show ended, I walked outside, the cool evening air brushing my skin. I looked up at the sky, soft and deep and full of possibility, and for the first time, I whispered without fear, I'm happy. Not perfectly, not always, but truly. The house was mine. Yes, but more importantly, my life was mine. My story was mine. And love, the real kind, was no longer something I chased. It was something I cultivated, something I chose, something I finally understood. As I stood there beneath the twilight, I felt my aunt's presence. Gentle, warm, like the hush of her voice when she read me bedtime stories. I hope I made you proud, I whispered. A soft breeze rustled the trees, as if answering, you did. You always did. And as I walked home, to the house she left me, the life she gave me, and the future I built myself, I carried with me the deepest truth of all. We are not defined by the secrets that break us, but by the courage to uncover them and begin again. Thank you, my dear listener, for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this journey touched something inside you, if it reminded you of your own strength, your own resilience, or the quiet courage it takes to face the truth and begin again, I hope you'll take a moment to leave a like on this video. Your support truly helps this little community grow. And if you'd love to hear more stories of family, healing, forgiveness, and the beautiful ways we rebuild ourselves, I warmly invite you to subscribe and stay with us for the next chapter. Before you go, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And which moment in this story stayed with you the most? I read every single message, and your words mean more to me than you know. Until we meet again, take gentle care of your heart, and remember, you are never too old, and it is never too late to rewrite your story.